All right, hello and welcome back to the third segment of our video today. This part's going to cover your trackside riding and evaluation, some performance analysis, and some basic dial-in. All right. We'll also discuss geometry in this segment, which is also, obviously critically aligned with trackside dial-in. All right. So some topics to discuss. The most rudimentary and basic one. I ride my bike straight in a fast line as fast as it'll go, in a straight line as fast as it'll go. Is it stable, right? Now, people always ask me, I don't know what to tell you about my bike. I don't know what you're looking for, what you need to know. The simplest thing is, what does it do that you don't like? If you ride your bike in 6th gear wide open and it wobbles, chances are you don't like that, right? And so that's what you can come and say, I don't like it. It does this at 100 miles an hour and that frightens me. So these are the things you need to note and write down and keep track of, particularly if you're not confident in moving and making your own changes at the track. These are the things you got to be able to go describe to your tuner or to your, to another expert rider or somebody in the pits who can help you. All right. So that one shouldn't wobble and shouldn't be cranking away on the damper to stop it from that. We've gone over that, right? Performance under braking. This is nothing more than I'm going at whatever speed I'm going. I'm headed to the turn. From the moment I pop up from behind the bubble and squeeze my brake, how does it act in that period from there until you decide you're going to turn into the turn? Straight line braking performance. Does the bike dive really hard? Does it dive too slow? Or does it not dive at all? When I pull the brake, does the back wheel snap up in the air? Does the bike fishtail, which is probably one of the most common things people get, is their bike's wiggling and squirming while they're trying to stop it, okay? Now, we're just going to draw the good old-fashioned classic turn here, basic turn. What we're talking about is this area here. Now the reason we want you to think about this stuff is how we're going to move the bike is relevant to where the problem occurs in a turn, okay? So these are the segments that you need to break down into as you ride through a turn. These are what you need to think about. Now we don't want you to have huge detailed thoughts about this. Initially you just want to go, it scares me while I'm braking, It scares me when I turn it in, right? These are just get the big picture, right? Don't go for hardcore in-depth analysis. Pay attention to what you're doing while you're riding around the track. Just this is where I see it scare me, right? This is where I don't like it or it doesn't feel good. I don't have any confidence, all right? Now, steering effort. This is when you've come to the turn and you've decided, all right, I'm now at my turn point and I'm gonna turn my bike, right? How hard is it to do that, right? Do I have to push really hard? Do I have to push hard to get the thing to fall off? Or does it just fall off? Is it what I want? When I come and I turn my bike, does it turn so hard I feel like it's going to fold up and fall down on me, right? So you're looking for steering effort or, the bike turning so fast that it frightens you, right? And again, all this is don't worry about any of this because this is all correctable, right? Then next segment of we're going to talk about is mid-turn, right? And we're looking for mid-turn stability, right? When the bike's laid over on its side, is it all collected? Are you having to hold on the inside bar to keep the bike from tucking? Are your arms getting tired and worn out? Or do you feel like you can relax your hands and the bike's going to keep going where it's going, which is the most neutral bike you could possibly have? Or is it just not making it to the apex ever, right? These are signs that are all relative to the whole chassis geometry. But if you turn your bike in, and maybe you're not that sensitive to the amount of input you got to give it, but if you turn the bike in, it starts turning. You get up seat, bike starts turning, and it just never gets to the apex of the turn. It's just out here somewhere. That's a sign to you that chassis geometry is wrong, and we'll get to that in a minute, show you how to fix that. So what we're looking for is, does my bike, when I've turned it off, I get it laid into the turn, does it drive in a smooth, stable fashion, and does it get to the apex of the turn without me fighting with it? Do I have to push it there? Do I have to stay out of the gas really a long time to make it curl into the middle of the turn, right? If I've got the throttle cracked, does it just, is the thing never make it to the turn, right? So these are the things we're looking for coming to this point, right? Now, in the midst of this, we need to be looking in mid-turn. We got ground clearance problems. Anybody drag stuff? That's bad, right? Now, we don't want to drag anything on a racetrack, ever, right? Most people have solid pegs. Everybody got solid pegs? Or solid pegs are good, and I'm for them. They save you from a lot of damage and whatnot, but the only single drawback to a solid peg is if you actually can lean over far enough to drag it, you can lift the wheels off the ground, right? Now, this pretty much applies to anything on your bike. If it's dragging the ground, right, you need to get it off of the ground, get it out of the way. Now, classic mistake people make is they will move the chassis of the bike to do this, right? Their bike may be working perfectly. You know, they've got their forks set where they want them, the shock height set where they want it. Bike turns perfectly and does everything right when it comes into the turn and leaves the turn. They'll go, but I'm dragging my peg, and they'll come in and raise the shock up, or they'll, raise the forks up, right? Now, you've just changed the way your bike works because something was dragging the ground, right? You want to move the stuff dragging the ground, not the bike, all right? So that's where, if you can afford them, adjustable rear sets like this are awesome, right? You can just put the pegs anywhere you want them. If your pipe's dragging the ground, right, drill another hole in the bracket and pull the thing up out of the way. Get the stuff that's dragging the track up off the track. The only instance where you should move the chassis of the bike because it's dragging the ground is if the engine is dragging the ground, right? Now, that's pretty rare that somebody can do that, but top pro guys, Mark Young used to drag he crashed his ZX9 because the engine would drag the ground, and Michael Barnes had the same problem when he rode a Zlock Formula USA bike. Certain bikes, if the engine case is dragging the ground, the only thing you can do is raise the bike, and you have to deal with if you don't like the changes that the bike, comes by. Certainly a bike that you're not thoroughly happy with riding is better than one that will crash you into the weeds. So that's just your only option. Can't really say I've ever seen anybody drag an engine case on a GSXR ever. R1, it's happened occasionally, but again, this is fast guys. It would be possible, I suppose, to if you had it stock, where it was all down to the ground, it would be possible to drag one. Most aftermarket engine case covers have a milled off angle on them, so it's pretty hard. The only time you drag them is when you're on your way to crashing, usually, right? So you're going from riding to hitting the dirt, and that's the moment you drag the engine case. So, so does everybody kind of understand that philosophy? If stuff's dragging the ground, get it off the ground, and unless it's again something solid that we can't move. All right, now the last portion of the turn we need to talk about is exiting the turn. All right, we're going to label this section exit, obviously. Exit starts the minute you go from either partial or neutral throttle to opening the throttle. Your throttle point, right? On the gas. All right? Because dynamically what changes at that point is we've gone from really the greatest effect being the front of the bike to the greatest effect being the back of the bike, all right? And again, I keep alluding to, we'll get to this when we get to chassis geometry, and this will all be explained at that point, which we're headed that way here at this moment. But this is what you need to be thinking about when you ride around the track. Straight line braking, turn in, mid-turn, and exit, all right? And what we're looking for on exit is, all right, when I crack the throttle, does my tire grip the ground? When I crack the throttle, does the wheel spin? When I crack the throttle, does the bike squat? And then does the wheel spin, right? These are things you need to try and pay attention to the motions that happen. And then, does my bike stay on the track when I'm leaving the turn? If you get on the turn at the same time the bike in front of you does and you find yourself running off the edge of the track, this is a sign there's a problem, right? Or particularly, has anybody ever been right behind somebody in front of them, they get on the throttle at the same time that person does, the other person drives away down the track and you're driving towards the edge of the track and you can't stay on the track, right? And you just don't know what's wrong, right? That's called squat, and we're going to show you how to fix that. So, and particularly it's aggravating when it's a little bike and you're on a big bike, right? And you go, wait, and it's not that somebody knows how to twist the throttle harder than you. It's the chassis. So, All right, so what we're looking for, bike should come out here and stay on the track. Everything's nice and good, no wheel spin. You know, we get good positive grip, and the bike doesn't wobble while it's accelerating. Bike doesn't pump or pogo or do anything odd. We want to get on the throttle. We want the bike to sit, drive off the turn, and stay on the track and make a fast lap, right? And that's what we're looking for. All right, so now, what's going on if it doesn't do any of this stuff, all right? Well, let's talk about the front end. We'll go all the way through a turn with the front end of the bike. We talked earlier, we said, go along a straight line, pull the brake. If you've got the front end of the bike loaded down and you try and turn it and the wheel starts bouncing, we don't have enough rebound damping in the fork. Now that can occur typically up to about this point. You won't really find it past there, because most of the time by people get to mid-turn, they've released the brake, right? Even the fastest riders aren't trailing the brake past, past the apex of the turn, right? So unless they've done something really wrong, in which case they're going to be out here anyway. They're not going to be in on the racing line. They're going to be out here trying to stop the thing, keep from crashing, right? So, most people have let go of the brake somewhere in this area anyway. But we want to make sure the bike has a nice smooth controlled dive, that it turns nicely, that we don't have any front wheel chatter, harshness, or bouncing. Anywhere there's bumps, we want to feel, remember if it's spiking you or whatnot. Now, when we're in mid-turn, we want the bike to feel neutral, and no chatter, no harshness, no wheel bouncing. And then when we go to get on the throttle, we want that wheel to still feel connected to the ground, right? When we're accelerating, should feel connected to the ground. We go to accelerate and the front end starts hunting, skimming, pushing away. Make sure, again, hopefully at this point we've already checked we have enough free sag, and make sure that the rebound damping is not too slow. Because those are signs that the front wheel is not dropping out and grabbing the ground, looking for the ground, staying connected to the ground, right? In fact, while wheelies look cool, right? On like Olin Superbike forks, they have really long, dramatic top-out springs. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep the wheel on the ground so that when these guys are steering off the turn, the bike stays connected to the ground and drives off the turn, okay? And doesn't wheelie, away from the turn. Okay, so potential problems there with the front end headed in the turn. And again, common sense, what is it doing that I don't like, right? Any of the things I mentioned, plus it does this and I don't like that. Wobbling under acceleration once you've gotten on the gas, anything like that, all right? Now, rear wheel action. How many people have had the back of their bike going coming up to a turn, right? Just really going like this on the way to the turn. That's your fault, all right? No shock in the world can fix that. No shock in the world can fix that. And really what the problem is you're using the engine to stop the bike, okay? And what you haven't done is you're not matching the engine RPM. You've not slowed the bike down enough to where you can make the rear wheel speed match the engine speed, so on and so forth, okay? Now, this is obviously hard on your equipment. It's really beats the daylights out of your chain and sprockets. And I've seen fast amateur guys that really wreck their chains will be falling off their bike at the end of a race because they're destroying them trying to stop the bike, right? So, second thing is, while your bike's back there doing this, you can't turn it, right? So even though you're trying to stop, and while it's going like this, you can't turn until it stops doing that. So the goal is, to correct this, is you need to stop harder before you start downshifting, okay? You need to stop the bike more, stop, and then try and get your downshifts done quickly. Most people, and it's an easy thing to have happen, and most people say, it only happens in the race. I don't know why. It never happens in practice. Whenever I'm in the race and I get going, that's when it happens. Well, that's because you went from 9/10 to 10/10, right? And now you're trying to go, past the 2 down to the 1.5 brake marker, and the only way you can get this thing to stop without going into the weeds is you're looking for everything in the world that'll stop. So instead of using the proper brake marker, and now you're trying to use the engine, so you get the first downshift you can possibly get the second you grab the brake and dump the clutch, and now the back wheel's all bouncing away to the turn. So what you got to do is stop the bike and then make big rips of the throttle in between. Really try and zing the throttle up there, whoop, so that the bike lines up, and then make sure the bike is slowed enough before you start downshifting. If you screw this up and try and downshift too soon, try and ease the clutch out. It's like a reverse hole shot, right? You know, don't downshift and let go of the clutch, because that's what starts the whole problem, right? Just try and feed the clutch out. You know, you can hear the engine try and speed up and match the thing while the bike's trying to slow down still, right? So this is not a novice problem. Fastest guys I've worked with will lapse into this, and it's a very, very easy thing to do. And in fact, some of them will say, well, I don't care whether you say not to do it, I'm going to do it anyway because it helps me stop, right? And the net result is that's all fine as long as you never, ever, ever screw it up. If you screw it up, right, and your bike falls neutrals and you get in the mindset of using your engine to stop your bike, you just go flying off the racetrack. There will be like somebody hit the nitrous bottle. Anybody ever hit a false neutral? I've seen people grimace. Whenever you mention false neutral, there's always this, oh crap, you know. Because doesn't it feel like when you hit a false neutral, it feels like somebody just hit you in the back of the bike and you just go flying, right? And so the real panic is then you've been conditioned to have that much extra braking out of the engine, and now you can't stop, right? And you panic, right? Most people end up crashed is what happens. My great lesson from my very first race instructor, Ed Bargy. Everybody's heard of Ed Bargy. His number one rule, and it saved me the first time I false neutraled, was turn. All right? No matter what happens, when you're on the racetrack, no matter what's happening, when you come to your turn point, turn. Because as long as you're on the pavement, you got a shot at saving it, right? So, you know, I've thought, well, that's going to be important someday, and I used to think about it, and I would imagine what would happen to me if I had a false neutral. And so the first time it happened, I panicked, you know, and I had about 1 second, and I heard Ed Bargy say turn, and, you know, I turned, and guess what? I didn't crash, you know. The second thing is to always remember upshift. It's just the way motorcycle transmissions work. If it doesn't make it down in the gear and you're trying to downshift, don't try and push it down into the gear, because it'll just get a big, you know, out of the transmission, and the back wheel will go, you know, and you're really in trouble then. So always upshift. Just go ahead and blow the turn, but just try and stay on the track, right? That's the key thing. So see that issue there, unfortunately, is rider-induced. Don't go try and fool with your shock, because you're not going to fix it, all right? Now, turn in. So we did talk also about straight line braking, this issue, right? Back of the bike swimming. In theory, we know that we've already got our free sag, so that's not going to be our problem. Next most likely suspect most of the time is too slow of rebound damping in the shock. All right? So what you've got is anything that bumps the back of the bike up, the back wheel doesn't drop out quickly enough to find the ground. So they hover, you know, and you'll just get this, right? And you'll see it all the time. When I see world superbikes like that, and I go, man, I wish I could grab that knob, you know, and fix that guy's bike, because it's just like the simplest thing, and you wish you could fix it for him, because, you know, it's such a struggle. If you can't stop your bike with confidence, it's going to be hard to do fast laps, right? So we get to mid-turn, back of the bike. Really, you know, you don't find people with too many problems mid-turn once they get settled in the turn with the bike. You know, like I said, it's almost unheard of that you get any form of chatter or anything odd. So if your bike's doing something wrong, then chances are it nearly is a mechanical failure. You know, something bizarre has gone wrong, because I just don't hear of back wheel problems in the middle of a turn. All right? Now, everything changes at the moment we open the throttle. That's where all the fun starts with the back of the bike, right? Now, so remember, what we're looking for is, when I open my throttle, do I have good grip? You know, does my rear wheel grab the ground, not spin, and does it drive me out of the turn? You know, at the level of people that are, you know, are taking suspension for mortals here, we're not supposed to be spinning the tire, crossing the bike up, and laying a darkie out of the turn as we're leaving the turn. That's, you know, a controlled form of crashing. And since you don't have an 18-wheeler full of bikes to give you a new one when you get thrown off, you know, I don't suggest you ride like that, right? So we're actually trying to make the bike grip the ground so that we can accelerate and leave the turn as fast as possible, okay? So grip is what we want, right? Now, so what we're looking for, open the throttle, do we get grip? If we don't get grip, if we get some sort of wheel spin, we need to pay attention to two main things. Does it happen right away when I open the throttle? Okay, because that's going to tell us we have something too stiff. Spring is too stiff, compression damping is too stiff, something's too stiff. And in the case of chassis geometry, when we get there, there'd be too much swing arm angle. All right? So we want to know, I'm in the turn and I get ready to go, I crack the throttle and the thing steps right out. Do you get that, right? Crack the throttle, thing steps right out. The other symptom is, I open the throttle, the bike sits down, starts driving forward, and starts spinning. Okay? This is almost what everybody here will have felt if they've ever felt it with a bike in more street trim that you've taken to the track. A bike will squat back down and then start spinning, right? So pay attention to those two variations. They seem subtle, but the cure is completely different, okay? We don't have enough stuff holding the bike up in the back. If it does that first, right, there's not enough going on back there to hold the thing up, right? So it will squat and spin, right? Now, I'm going to show you how to fix squat and all that, again, in the geometry here in just a minute, right? So, all right, now we've actually talked about the two wheel actions through the turn. Now, and I've given you damping cures.